Welcome to the Voice of Retail. I'm Michael LeBlanc, your host. The Voice of Retail is produced in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada and is presented by Hale, a performance marketing partner trusted by brands like ASICS, Sage, and Orange Theory to scale with focus and impact. David Ian Gray, welcome back to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you?
I'm good, and it's good to be back. Thanks, Mike.
It's great to have you back on the mic. It's been too long. You and I have seen each other, but haven't had you on the mic. Where am I finding you today?
I am in so I teach a retail course at Capilano University School of Business out in Vancouver, and I'm right now up at the brand new Squamish campus building, having a meeting here, and I'm looking out a window right now. Out over the forest and the mountains, sunny afternoon through the valley is
beautiful.
Spectacular.
Yeah, God, that's real God's country up there. That's a great place to be hanging a hat and doing a podcast from. That's for sure. Well, listen, you and I have known each other a long time, but let's not assume everybody knows who you are or knows enough about you. Who are you, and what do you do for a living?
You got the name, David Ian Gray, and I guess in reverse order because I referenced teaching. That's sort of a passionate sideline, but when I'm very invested in helping Capilano University build out a retail focus in their School of Business, which is both a little daunting in academia, but also quite exciting and rewarding. And the other life I lead is providing a range of advisory services to Canadian retailers and their ecosystem, which could include tech innovators and landlords and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Now you're based in Vancouver. How's the Vancouver scene going? I mean, you got lots of great retailers in your backyard. It's a vibrant tech scene. What's your pulse on the city?
Vancouver has bounced back. I'm talking more from a city life point of view, but I think it's taken a little while to recover from some of the effects of the pandemic. There is still kind of a grittiness that wasn't there before, but it's starting to soften. And the independent scene is funny thing about change is change always like knocks some out and then opens the door for new. And there's been a kind of a bit of a surge in new, say, bars, restaurants, and local indie retail, but some of our faves have also been closing shop. So I wouldn't say it's the best of times right now, but it's certainly it's certainly better than it was a couple of years ago. We just have to deal now with another massive uncertainty and how much we pay for our inputs with the tariff situation.
Sure, and I think of downtown where you've got a couple of big buildings where you had very nice Nordstrom and Hudson's Bay in the same kind of visual site within each other. So that leaves a bit of a hole in the real estate. That's both, I don't know, there's some trepidatiousness there, but it's also exciting, I guess, in some ways that the city will continue to reinvent itself, yeah?
Yeah, and the core does have that issue, but there are around the periphery, there's things going on. And the lower mainland, as it's known, or Greater Vancouver, it's now developing strong secondary pockets of urban density. So within a few years, Surrey, the center of Surrey, which is another city entirely but connected, will be bigger than downtown Vancouver is.
Wow.
As an example, and Burnaby's got a couple of nodes, and a lot of, like in Toronto, there's a lot of building on transit lines.
Fantastic. All right. Well, we're here not just to catch up with each other, and we are going to talk more about some retail stuff. I can't have you on the mic without doing some rapid-fire questions. We'll save that for the end. But you, with your partners Angus Reid, you've put out a new survey, some research around the pre-owned market. Very interesting stuff. And so I want to talk to you about it. So first of all, I guess we should start at what holds your attention for that part of the market? I know you've always been very much concerned or very much focused on the overall impact of retail from from the full cycle perspective. Is that what's kind of grabbed your interest in why you did this survey? Tell me about it.
Yeah, I think there's always like a sort of a hum in my head around sustainability and sort of the more evolved notion now of circularity. And this goes, way back. When I did my MBA, I also was doing some environmental studies courses, sort of creating an environmental MBA in a hodgepodge way. I've always had that interest. My interest has always been that it should be a mainstream aspect to business, not something parked off in a corner or a department. So I've always been looking for evidence of that catching. And in our studies with consumers over the years, we've kind of, I think, debunked the notion that there's a big majority of such conscientious shoppers that they would forego quality or price affordability to do something good in the world. What it really is more of a tiebreaker, that if they can do good with one option that the other option doesn't give and not trade much off, they're gonna do the good. Mm-hmm. So we kind of watched that evolve and how retail's tried to be as sustainable as possible, but still serve customers for what they need. And so that's always been there. Specifically around pre-owned, there's been other sort of anecdotal articles, a couple other research pieces that just sort of are starting to quantify, I'm calling it the mainstreaming of pre-owned. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to understand it better. And we've heard, anecdotally, especially from young people, the idea of shopping vintage stores has become really a passion. So wanted to try and benchmark the Canadian scene, but also ask a little bit about the why and wherefore behind it, what's moving it forward, what might be hindering it.
Oh, interesting. Now, you're based in Vancouver, but you operate across the country. Tell me about the survey. Is it a good sample size, coast to coast, age group, and all that great stuff?
Yeah. So we've partnered with Angus Reid for a while now on different studies, and they're pros, and it's 1,500 plus respondents across the country, including French.
Oh, fantastic!
And we've got representation across the board. Yep.
Well, let's dive into the survey. I mean, people can read the survey and get the numbers, so to speak. But I was kind of let's call it a couple of them. I think that one of the surprises was the percentage of adult Canadians that are buying pre-owned was 77%. I found that a surprisingly high number. Did that number surprise you? What did you think of that number?
Yeah, it did. I thought it would be a lot, whatever that means.
Yeah.
And by the way, just for definition, we asked if they had bought a pre-owned item in the past year. Mm-hmm. But that is a very mainstream figure. Mm-hmm. And that combined with some questions on frequency and that sort of thing, it really, I guess, firmed up in my mind anyway, that I think we notionally underestimate the impact of the secondhand market as we talk about the retail scene in Canada. I think it's really much bigger than we think it is.
Interesting. I'm going to ask you a bit later to help us, think about segmentation in that market, because the pre-owned market exists in a whole swath of different contexts. The one thing that didn't surprise me, I guess you could say, but I have some questions about is Gen Z buying books and records, and even when you and I were young fellas, we were kind of buying retro stuff. I was anyway. I was buying the Doors and stuff. Led Zeppelin that came a little bit before me. Is that just a thing that we all do? Is look backwards, or is there some more interesting observations? Is it like I need to get some non-digital things because my life is overwhelmed by digital things? Like any sense of the why behind the Gen Z, buying of records and the kind of books and kind of old school stuff, so to speak?
Well, I'm going to take some guesses, but one of the fun things in the research field is, at least for me, often doing a study like this ends up landing me with like 10 more questions that I want to go after.
Yeah.
This is one of them. So when we think about all the discussion, and we've been to the conferences, and you have the talking head on stage, talking about the digital native generations, Alpha, Z, started with millennial, and how they've eschewed, they moved away from physicality. This is like a stunning reversal of that. In the two categories that were the first to emerge around the shift online, right? Books and music. Anecdotally, to support that, I know so many young people who are well underway in a vinyl collection. So not just CDs, but they're collecting vinyl. I'd like to understand the depth and breadth of that a little bit more, but there's enough commentary on that in my circles, for example, that I go, yeah, there's something up. And certainly their consumption of those that category, books and music, is higher than a little bit higher than Gen Y, and certainly higher than Gen X and Boomers. I find that amazing. And so when you talk about, I don't know if it is retro, Mike. It might be a little bit of that. It also might be, young people tend to always want to differentiate a little bit, right? So for them, maybe it's kind of this cool differentiator. I'm not sure. It lets them touch music. Maybe it's just finding out that at the end of the day, touching experiences brings more to life than just, hearing it. They're still very active on everything from Spotify to TikTok and everything else, getting their influences. The other thing too, of course, is a lot of new bands are putting out vinyl. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they're picking up AC/DC, but
but they should be, of course. But they should be, of course. They should. Well, I started thinking about it, and you're right. When we looked at how fast the digitization of our lives was happening, it's actually kind of a parallel to shopping physically in stores, right? Like, some thought, not you or I, that everything would go e-commerce. We knew better that shopping is also more cultural and social experience. And I feel like, I wonder if there's, and here I am asking you another question, not that you asked this question, that these kids are thinking, I call them kids, but they're thinking, my life is so dominated by the big platforms that I want to be independent. And I think you touched on that a little bit, right? I want my own vibe. I want to see what the album cover looks like, and I want to put the record on my own. I don't want to have to be part of the platforms. You think there's a bit of broader rebellion, or broader, like, I like being in person more than I thought maybe we thought they would?
Yeah, I really do. This is definitely a topic I want to dig further into, but I think it's I do think it's that idea that in that age range, there's you want to kind of fit in with your peers, but you also want to stand out from the generation that came before you. And I know that from other fashion research over the years and that sort of thing. So I think it makes sense to me, but this was a real stunner for me as well when we got the data back.
Now, speaking of big platforms, your research tells us that Facebook Marketplace is rules, and I used to run classified ads for CanWest Media or the Post. So, back then it was eBay and Kijiji, and they kind of decimated classifieds. Could you help us segment a way in how you think about it from how people are shopping? Like, it may not have been in your research, or it may have been, but there's for-profit, there's pure, there's charity, there's a mix of charity and for profit, like Value Village. How do you think about segmenting, and how does that help us understand the market?
Well, in terms of segmenting by channel type, you're right to point out that there's an array of ways that you can tap into secondhand. And by the way, secondhand's been around for a long, long time.
Sure.
My dad always bought secondhand cars, right? There's certain categories that were always there. I think what's happened is the breadth of product categories now, and the regularity of seeking product through those channels is what's really different. And when you talk about, well, what are those channels? If we start with online versus physical, online obviously is sort of the game changer. But what's really interesting is we've had Craigslist and Kijiji and eBay for a little while, and I'm just looking at the data here. we still had about, I'm rounding a little bit, but about half of the participants indicated that they picked up, or at least browsed. Well, eBay's still there at about half of the participants engaged with it. But the biggest thing with online is that Facebook is ubiquitous. 76% of the respondents had bought something on a Facebook marketplace in the past year. It reminds me of Amazon. But this is for pre-owned. And then we asked about frequency, and so 45% of people shopping are checking that out and shopping Facebook Marketplace at least once a month or more. And that's way ahead. The second kind of big category is sort of a broad mishmash of other online buy-sell sites. So it's kind of a compendium. So it really stands out.
And I guess we could say that, a lot of those transactions, some are done by mail, but often they're meeting in parking lots. Like it's a hybrid, so to speak, right? Do the transaction, find the product online, but then meet in person to do the exchange of the goods. It's interesting, right?
Yeah, really interesting model, and it's one where sort of the shopping public is forming. The platform was there, but it's kind of taken on its own life. And I think we found in the research that generally the seeking of secondhand has been skewed a little bit to the younger generations, but I think they end up introducing their older relatives into these things. So back to Facebook Marketplace, we're seeing that across the board as being in high use no matter what the age group.
We'll be right back after these messages. The Voice of Retail is brought to you by Hale, the partner behind some of the fastest growing DTC and retail brands in North America. Hale is recognized for senior teams who cut out the noise and keep their focus on what matters most: growth. Their approach is based on outcomes, not hours. They are selective with who they partner with, bringing speed, accountability, and a clear strategy to every engagement. Paid media, content, performance, all of it connects directly to real results. That's why brands like ASICS Sage and Orange Theory choose Hale to help them scale. Learn more at wearehale.com. Now, at the other end, you've got the Canada Goose and Arterex who are reselling their own refurbed product. Refurbed, they both have a gently used and refurbed thing. So I guess that's the other end of the scale, right? Retailers themselves, particularly, I guess, luxury, but not necessarily, because I think H&M does it too. What do you make of that trend?
Yeah, I do. I think that's, and I don't think that began in Canada, but I think Canada's picking up on it. I would say that sort of began with the more purpose brands, like Patagonia does that. But in Europe, the social contract between business and public is a little different. So I think they were early movers on the idea of takebacks and doing their own resale. We can talk maybe a little bit later about how profitable or not that might be.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
But in this evolving secondary market, there's sort of a combination of access where the more opportunities for a shopper to get the kind of stuff they want, the more likely they're going to participate in it. It's sort of, you need both moving in concert. So I think retail offering their own like that, and IKEA's doing it. You mentioned Canada Goose. More and more are getting involved. There's also all the in between, where you mentioned charities earlier, but you've got the charitable thrift stores. You have flea markets. You've got yard sales are still pretty big. That's seasonal. But we see more and more access to kind of curated vintage, if you want to call it that, more in the fashion, and maybe some housewares. And then online, Poshmark has made a bit of a name for itself, targeting more of those luxury brands. We don't, Canadians right now, we only have about 15% of us are shopping on Poshmark. So that's not really taken off, but of course that's aimed at an economic segment of the population that isn't everybody.
Yeah, it's just a smaller part of the segment. Now that's a great segue into How do you think, based on the survey you did and your experience, how do you segment customers? It feels like there's some who do it for the thrill of the find, the thrill of the hunt. It's just fun to go to. Maybe it's fun to go to, garage sales. It's fun to go to these stores. And there's others probably, let's say, at the other end of the scale who are doing it out of necessity. And there's a bunch of people in between. How is that how you think about the segmentation? And where's the I guess what I'm getting to is where's the opportunity for the retailers listening to address the different segments?
Well, first of all, I think at a very first pass level, you did it really well. I think there's some different driving forces. So if it's sort of segmenting on motivations, you've hit a couple. A big one, and we need to kind of delve into it a little bit more if we have a moment.
Mm-hmm.
When we ask people what is behind this, sustainability ranks equal to affordability, and that's the vast majority. Like that's 8 out of 10 participants who are buying secondhand will state those things. They're way up there. I would also put up there the ability to find unique items is pretty high. Some have indicated it's like the phrase used as a treasure hunt. It's
sure.
kind of for the hunter. The ones who probably like going through a Winners and not knowing what they're going to get and then being surprised. That kind of aspect is a motivator as well.
Gamification. I've heard it called gamification of retail as well. Like you're going through a giant couple of milk crates and it's fun, and you might just find that vintage Bowie album in there.
Well, Mike, and that's sort of when we think about experiential retail, I mean, that is part of that, right? When you suddenly are doing it because you're actually enjoying the engagement, that's pretty good. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
And I would say Facebook Marketplace, again, anecdotally, we're hearing of people who kind of are regularly on there. They're just seeing what's on offer. But there's also, there's a few other hindrances as well. And people are finding that the prices aren't always as good as they're hoping, even though it's secondhand. They're finding, sometimes, especially with the online sellers, they're not always sure they can trust the seller. So there's a trust issue that comes into play.
Yeah.
A small minority, this surprised me on the negative. I thought more people would feel like shopping at a thrift store. There's a certain disorganization and sometimes a scent, we'll call it that comes with it. And I would have thought there'd be people say, I just don't want to go to those stores. And we found that not that many people agreed with that
interesting
view, but there were some. And quality of the items, not just trust the seller, but quality of the item. So there's sort of there's a pull and there's also a push against. But it was really interesting hearing some of those reasons. When you're saying how would you segment though, I think further research, it would be interesting to kind of segment more about how engagement levels. And by that, I mean, how many people are shopping across many categories on a regular basis.
That's interesting.
And I heard a total anecdotal situation on the weekend. There's a younger person, and she told me that, and she's very fashionable. She makes income. I don't think money's really the issue. She said 65% of her wardrobe is secondhand.
Wow.
And from very carefully shopped vintage places. And she said the real reason is, and you said what do mainstream retailers need to know. This is an indictment. She's saying that when she goes shopping in the malls, all the retailers are offering basically the same style, the same cuts at the same time.
Right.
So to really get something unique.
That's interesting.
She's finding that through the secondhand market.
Let's wrap up this part of the conversation on the Angus Reid work with lessons for retailers. I mean, it's not like many retailers haven't tried to get into this market. It's very expensive because there's a lot of touches on the product. Retailers thread up real. It's very hard to turn a profit. Any advice? What's the key, I guess, for retailers if they want to dabble in one way somewhere in the spectrum? What's the key to doing this and actually making money?
Well, I guess the first one is just be cognizant of this being as big as it is. In other words, if the notion inside your retail operation is, hey, our customers aren't spending right now, and what we're hearing from our peers is they're not selling any more than we are, therefore people are not buying. You're operating possibly, depending on the product category, on a faulty premise. And I think it's always dangerous to do so. So if we start with the fact that, again, I don't know how common it is, but the individual who said she has about 2/3 of her wardrobe as secondhand, if we start better understanding that, then I think the retailer is in a better position to decide how they're going to react to that. Because now there is leakage, there is share leakage out to these other channels. It's not for everybody, I don't think, as you pointed out. The logistics, especially on things like fashion, but you could pick almost anything. Everything in retail logistically is set up to handle new product, and to
one way,
break down pallets and track the RFID, etc. When you're doing take backs, and it's all kinds of stuff, and you're picking through it, you can't run inventory the same way. We did some work with a pretty major thrift out in the Fraser Valley of BC, and that was one of the really interesting aspects, is how to manage inventory and account for it properly. Like, even know if you're making money or not is a bit of a challenge.
Interesting. All right, that's great. Thank you. Now, is there somewhere where people can go to get the survey, see the survey in detail? They reach out to you. How do they get their hands on more of the data? Just reach out to you personally?
Give us a shout. And Retail Insider did a really great piece on this.
All right, so you and I have known each other a couple or 20 more years, so let's have some fun. Let's do a rapid question round, and I'm going to throw some ideas at you, and you give me your first responses, and we'll make it fun and fast. So, AI for retailers: overhyped, the right amount of hype, underhyped? Where you sit?
Yes. So listen, if you're an independent retailer, then it's overhyped, because there's only so much you're going to be able to do. You're almost waiting for the tools you use to naturally embed what you need to happen seamlessly, where you're not even really aware of it. If you're Walmart and the like, then no, it's not overhyped. You're in massive transformation. And so, is it the right amount of hype? I think it is, in terms of this is not like back when we were talking about the metaverse, and which was really overhyped. Even there wasn't one moment I didn't think that was overhyped for anybody. This actually is real, and it's already changing, Mike. I'm sure for you and for me, even in my consumer life, I am searching for things. I'm getting solutions. I'm discovering things in a far richer, different way than I was 2 years ago because of this. And I know, as a tool within the business side of our lives, it's also transforming there. So I don't think but I think it's not the same pace for everybody, and I don't think everyone can invest the same level in it right now.
Okay. Most creative and interesting thing you've seen in retail this year?
It's a non-starter for me, because I really think there's nothing interesting I'm seeing this year in 2025. And I'm sure there are a lot of people are going to freak out and say, no, there's all sorts of great things, but it just seems very treading water to me in the industry. Okay.
Percentage of HBC stores occupied by 2030?
Might be a trick question, because some of those stores may get totally blown up and repurposed, right? But if you say, are there going to be vacant HBC spaces in 2030? I'll say no. It'll all be dealt with.
Okay. The Ruby Lou saga. Lack of imagination by the landlords, or the landlords just have better ideas for those spaces?
I think it's more a case of someone whose success, and she is a billionaire, her success came from other activities, not retail. And when I look at the malls, those malls were all in existence before she took them over. So I think the discomfort for the landlords is there's someone saying, trust me, I'm going to reinvent the Canadian department store retail landscape, but without really a track record of ever having done so, and without really a good blueprint that someone can latch onto and say, yeah, this makes logical sense to me. I see your path forward. I think it'd make much more sense if she had a great beta test of one store in one place.
Okay. Best and biggest retail conference being held in Vancouver in September. That's a trick question.
That would have to be RCC's Retail West, and far and away beyond any other events in the city.
Right on. Best answer. Biggest issue in retail that merchants need to spend more time than they are today thinking about.
I'm going to go rapid fire several, just by name. Okay.
Okay.
Reigniting brands in place of just a pursuit of performance marketing, creating relationship, a combo of getting back to seeing consumers as a source of lifetime value, not that transaction that day. And understanding that having an AI chatbot does not make you a service-oriented company. True service has to be in the form that the shopper needs and wants to be served. So I think those are the big ones. Maybe the last one being, I'm nervous about seeing a growing divide between the tech people in the business, the technology people who are so critical, and the people who understand how to run retail operationally and through merchandise. I feel like there's a divide happening there, and I think that's got to be addressed.
Okay, last one. On a scale 1 to 10, 1 being no growth, 10 being strong year-over-year growth, what's your pulse for 2026 retail in Canada?
Between 3 and 7, and who the hell knows? Because if you asked this question of me in August, August of 2024, I would have had a very different scenario in mind as to what's actually played out. So I'll leave that to smarter people than me.
Well, we'll circle back. And by the way, there's not many more smarter people than you in this business. So, David, such a treat to get you onto the mic, onto the podcast again. Been too long. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in Vancouver coming up, and in your travels across Canada as you work in clients from coast to coast. So thanks again for joining me on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Thanks very much.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of The Voice of Retail. If you haven't already, follow on your favorite podcast platform so new episodes will land automatically each week. And be sure and check out my other retail industry media properties, the Remarkable Retail Podcast with Steve Dennis and the Global E-Commerce Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, Senior Retail Advisor, Keynote Speaker. If you want more content or chat, follow me on LinkedIn. Safe travels, everyone.